TPXimpact Holdings has a vision to deliver impactful, sustainable digital transformation to enrich how individuals and society experience the world. I'm delighted to be joined by the founder and chief executive, Neal Gandhi. So Neal, that is some purpose. So how do you intend to make that vision a reality?
So the first thing is by living our values, right? Our values are autonomy with responsibility. And the reason that's important is so many of the sort of legacy companies that exist out there have come from a world which is incredibly hierarchical, incredibly top down, where the intelligence is seen to be at the center or at the top. And, you know, that sort of reflects how software and transformation occurs in the past, right? It occurs through waterfall, which is a top-down methodology, whereas that's not how you do that anymore. You know, today you operate in an agile fashion using sort of hyperscale cloud, modern ways of working, and the way you pull that off is by believing in everything that you do that the intelligence is actually at the edge. So our job in the center or the top or however you want to draw it, our job is to empower our teams at the edge to do the work they need to do to get the job done, which means that they don't have bureaucracy. They are empowered, they are autonomous, but then alongside that, clearly they have to take responsibility as well, because you can't, otherwise it would be chaos. So we pull it off by living to our values.
So that sounds very idealistic. That is a beautiful world, that picture that you have painted with those words. But what is it that the company actually does? How will that enable us to achieve that nirvana?
What it does is it pulls together multi-disciplinary teams. So, you know, pulling together user researchers alongside content designers, alongside technical architects, alongside full stack software developers, working hand in hand together, highly iteratively to create solutions that actually work and deliver for against the goal. You know, you've seen so many horrendous examples of failures of big transformation programs. Going back, you know, 15, 20 years, the National Programme for IT and the NHS, to most recently, obviously, the track and trace, you know, debacle that you see that we've seen most recently. You know, these are examples of where it goes badly wrong. And I think if you operate in an incredibly iteratively, in an iterative way, you build something, you test it, you try it, you see what worked, you see what didn't work, you go back, you learn again, you iterate again and again and again. If you do that rapidly, and you share your findings along the way, you don't end up with these big program failures. You end up with the kind of thing that delivers great value for taxpayers in the public sector, something that truly delivers for its intended end user group, and ultimately is to the benefit of society.
So who's bought into your business model, your idea? Who are your customers?
Our customers range from DEFRA to Food Standards Agency to BEIS to DLUC, Department for Levelling Up, in central government, to NHS Blood and Transplant, NHS Business Services Authority, and various exemplar NHS trusts, to local government. You know, probably today we count 50 of the largest 160 local authorities as customers, or past customers, and so across public sector, it's that we work for 14 of the top 20 most recognised not-for-profit brands in the UK, or have worked for, and then we work in the commercial sector as well. So we've got clients like News International, Legal General, HSBC, and some clients in that sector as well.
Okay, that's probably answering my next question, which is looking at the website, your website. There's lots of thought leadership, and I was going to ask, there's thought leadership, but are you making any money? So what are the revenues like from this cross spectrum of customers and clients?
So obviously we're in our year end was the 31st of March, and so we're in a closed period at the moment before we announce our year end results. Analyst expectation for us for that year just gone was just shy of 80 million, I think 79 million revenue, and I think 11.8 million EBITDA. As we've said all along, we're in line to deliver against that, which is considerably up on the previous year. So yes, we do make money. We're incredibly cash generative. I'm a bit old-fashioned that way, right? So as much as EBITDA is a measure, I like things like cash conversion, and it goes back to my roots of my parents running a shop and counting cash at the end of the day. So it's something I've carried forward throughout my business career.
So you're old-fashioned, but you're also a modern-day polymath, which was evident in the previous iteration of the business. The trading entity, before it changed its name in October, was Panoply. I'm just wondering how similar TPXimpact is to Panoply, or did you go back to the drawing board, create something new without the hassle and the expense of a new listing?
No, so the whole idea was, this nirvana that you paint, this idea of having, of reducing bureaucracy, trying to simplify life for the delivery team closest to the client. It's something that originally the idea was that we would have a family of brands. So we'd make all these acquisitions, we'd allow them to run largely autonomously so that we wouldn't add that kind of level of complexity. But then there would be this layer of collaboration. So we were sort of trying to span the gap between, sit in the middle of, at one end, a pure holding company model, through to the other end, which is a wholly integrated company. And we were trying to sit somewhere in the middle there. The reality is, as we got to circa 65 million revenue, bear in mind we're only 3.5 years old, but as we got to circa 65 million revenue on a run rate basis last year, some cracks began to show, and some inefficiency began to show. So, for example, in a public sector bid, you get 10 working days to do your initial submission. We were spending 2 or 3 days at the front end of that discussing which brand was going to front it. We should have been spending 2 or 3 days at the end quality assuring our bid, making sure it was the best possible thing we could do, but we would always run out of time. So that was inefficient. We got into endless conversations about internal cross-charge rates and accountability, and it just became very obvious that we have to find another way which is more closely integrated. So we moved from a panoply, an impressive collection, to a single integrated organization, TPXimpact, which is more integrated, but still avoids some of those pitfalls that some of the larger, more established organizations sort of have gotten themselves into. And a lot of that is about, building a company in 2021, 2022. You've got all the tools available to you and ways of working available to you, so you don't have to kind of go down that old legacy way. So that's what the name change was all about. It was much more than a name change. It was actually a change in strategy.
So you talk about collaboration, but you also talk about acquisitions, of which there have been several. So I'm just wondering, what is the strategy? Buy and build, or buy and spin out?
Buy and build remains the strategy. We did spin out one thing, which was Open Dialogue. So one of the acquisitions we made a long time ago, long time in our terms, 3 years ago, was a company called Green Shoot Labs that had an idea for a product, which we incubated for a bit because I really believed in it as the product in terms of its idea. So we incubated it for a bit, we funded it, got it off the ground. And then one of the things that I'm super clear on is that we are a services company, not a product company. It's very easy to go down the trap of, this, oh, wouldn't it be wonderful to have recurring revenues, SaaS business and all that sort of stuff. That's actually really hard to pull off within a services business that's focused on cash generation. So we spun that out, but that's the exception. The general, it spun out, it raised £4 million of its own money. We took the management team from Autonomy, who'd sold to Blue Prism, to join that. So it's an incredibly successful spin out, and we own I think 17% stake in it. So as that goes off on its own journey, the shareholders of TPX will will benefit from that. But it's the exception. So we are buy and build. We are and organic growth. So we are, the numbers roughly go 80 million last financial year, roughly, going to and the goal is to get on a run rate basis to get to 200 million by March 25. In my very simplistic head, you kind of do that by growing, ideally growing circa 20 million this year in organic and about 20 million in acquisition, and doing the same 20 million and 20 million each year for the next 3 years.
I'm glad you spoke about investors and shareholders, because one of the testimonials on your LinkedIn profile says that you have a skill for value generation, so no pressure there, Neal. But why ultimately should investors get involved now at this stage of the company's development?
As I've said all along, there are going to be a new set of winners that emerge from this time. And, in every major shift in technology, there has always been a new set of winners. If you go all the way back to Digital Equipment Corporation of the 1970s, through to, the players that keep emerging in each cycle, in each major cycle. Well, post-agile, post-cloud being, Azure, Google Cloud Platform, and obviously AWS, post GitHub, which is a code share repository, which is so revolutionary, post design thinking, that world is a radically different world. And so there will be a new set of winners that emerge, and I'd like us to be one of them. And in terms of why us, because there's a few around, not many, but there are a few around. I feel like we're at the beginning of our journey. And that's sort of reflected in our market cap, right? So there are a few others that are out there that are really good. I have, no doubt at all. But perhaps they're valued and their multiples substantially higher than we are.
So you say us, you say we, you're very inclusive. Now, whilst you're a polymath, you don't operate in a solitary fashion. So I'm assuming, therefore, that there's a group of like-minded individuals on the team and on the board.
Yeah, there are. So our board, our PLC board is fantastic. So we have Mark Smith as chair. Mark ran Chime Communication, was COO and CFO at Chime Communications. Chris Sweetland was deputy CFO at WPP, all the way from 1989 through to 2016. So was with Sorrel all the way through that journey. Incredible person. Rachel Neiman, who was the first chief digital officer at Department for Health, and Isabel Kelly. Now, Isabel's an interesting one. She came from a background of Amnesty International, but then went and ran Salesforce Foundation Worldwide, working for Mark Benioff, and is our ESG champion on the board. And we decided a long time ago that we wanted to be thought leaders in and around ESG. Long before I didn't even know ESG was a term 4 years ago, but we knew that we wanted to be the right kind of company. We wanted to make money the right kind of way, so we brought Isabel on really early on as a demonstration of that.
So finally, Neal, and leading on from what you've just said there, is reputational growth the most important thing for your business at the moment?
Yes, of course. I mean, we're building a brand new brand from scratch in a pretty busy market with some pretty big names. And so it's all about reputation. It's about the work that we do for our clients, and it's about the people that we get to attract towards us. It's not easy. Our transition has been difficult. Moving from a holding company model to an integrated company model is difficult. There's no question about it. It's probably the hardest thing I've ever done to bring all this together. And it continues to be a work in progress. Like, we've got a lot of work to do, but I'm pretty convinced we get there. And the signs that I'm seeing, the type of people I get to attract nowadays are are leagues above the kind of people that our individual group companies could have attracted as in their own small companies. But then similarly, some of the people in those companies that we acquired are also brilliant. Matt Skinner, who runs our consulting division, is fantastic. Rebecca Hull, who runs our DX division, is also fantastic. Both of those came from acquired companies. So, it's a combination of all.
What a life-affirming message you've just given to your team internally and reassurance to investors. Thank you very much indeed. Neal Gandhi, founder and chief executive of TPXimpact Holdings. Thank you.
Thank you.